Welcome everyone to this podcast about how PhDs develop and use entrepreneurship skills. We're very lucky to have Rebecca McKelvey from InterScience with us today, a very entrepreneurial PhD, and she's going to introduce herself in just a moment. I just wanted to set the scene. Why are you listening to this podcast? Well, as we've already explained, PhDs are already developing and honing enterprise skills. But we wanted to explore, with some examples about how those skills are developed, what those skills are, how they're applied. And we also want to emphasize this point that entrepreneurship skills or enterprise skills don't just have to be used on commercial companies. As Rebecca will explain, hers is a social enterprise, I think. I'll let Rebecca explain that. And so we wanted to give you an opportunity to hear from other people who have some really interesting and inspirational stories to tell about their enterprise journeys. So Mario, do you want to do any other further intros before we ask Rebecca to introduce herself?
Brilliant, thank you, Warwick. I'm just really to say that I'm so looking forward to this conversation with Rebecca. I've known Rebecca for must be a couple of years. Or close to that, and really been following what her enterprise InterScience does. So shall I start off with an intro question? And if it's okay, Rebecca, I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your entrepreneurial journey. And I'm really interested to find out about your career path to date and how you've made those choices.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for inviting me here today. I started my PhD in 2010 at UCL in the neuroscience department, and I found UCL just a fantastic place. It's a huge community with so many very smart individuals, from the undergraduates, the master's students, the PhD students, the postdocs, the PIs, and it's just a very blue skies thinking type of community to be in. And I think there's never been a time in my life where possibility and opportunity is very much sort of a part of everyday life, and also sort of the networks, if you like. The networks you have at UCL are just incredible. And I think there is no better time in one's life to really start something that's really exciting and to have the support that being a UCL PhD student offers. And so when I was doing my PhD, I'd come from teaching, and I realized that actually the people around me, the researchers around me, they were so smart, they were so able, and actually we could leverage their abilities and their passion to really give back to young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. And so I started a small pilot that looked at engaging researchers to support disadvantaged students. And as with all pilot studies, as everyone here will know, it didn't go very well, which is fine. And I learned a lot from that pilot study, and I improved it. And the next year I did it again, but much better. And I also got a lot of support from UCL Innovation and Enterprise Department in how to start an organisation, what we should be thinking about, because obviously I didn't know all about accounts and how to register your company and things like that. So I got a huge amount of support from that department. And I think that was the first step on my journey to being an entrepreneur.
Brilliant. Can I ask another question just to add to that? Why was it so important for you to start up this enterprise?
I think, and it's something that I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs talk about, is that they see a real need. And I think that just saying, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, but not really knowing what you want to do is a very difficult place to be in. But I think looking at your environment, looking at things that aren't working, and you know that there is a way in which you can do that much, much better. It really sort of gave me the energy and the enthusiasm to just start. And I think one piece of advice that I'd give anyone wanting to start their organisation is you don't have to get everything in place. You can do pilots and you can start really small. And I think my advice is just do it.
Okay. I think
that is my advice.
excellent advice. And you mentioned there that there are things that you didn't know what to do, and so it was great that UCL Innovation and Enterprise were there. I think that's always the case with any entrepreneurship setting. There are always things that you don't know that you have to learn on the go, on the job, as it were. But I think there are also these skills that you discover that you have that you didn't necessarily know that you have. Like, so for example, myself, I sort of realized that I developed some entrepreneurship skills by accident. Like, I'm a lifelong musician, and I only realized as I started companies that I developed and honed a lot of these skills just from being a musician. So I wondered whether, and particularly during your PhD, there were any of these enterprise skills that you had developed that you didn't realize you already had.
Absolutely, yes. I think doing a PhD is very unique. It's a huge amount of hard work, and by doing that, you develop a huge amount of grit and resilience. And over the course of the 4 years that I started my PhD to finishing it, lots of things went wrong, as they would do in any research project. But that enabled me to really develop a huge amount of resilience, and that has seen me very well in developing an organization. You do have setbacks, things that you hope go well don't go well, and instead of giving up, you just have to push forward. So I think that is one thing that doing a PhD absolutely develops and is very useful for the future in developing a business. And then the second thing I think is blue skies thinking. When you speak to researchers, they don't look at what they could do on a small scale. They think big. They think really big. And I think with InterScience, I never was thinking, oh, what could I do in the borough of Camden or London? I was always think, what can I do UK wide? And I'm thinking now, what can I do worldwide? How could I expand this program? And I think actually doing a PhD and being a researcher, you very much think like that. And again, that has been really exciting to transfer that skill into thinking about business.
Brilliant. So Rebecca, I just want to add to that, if that's okay. So you've grown your company for over a number of years, and you've got a number of people working for you. How do you instill that kind of thinking into the people who work with you?
I think that your team are the most important thing, and I think whenever you speak to any sort of CEO, having a good team is absolutely key. And I think you're only as good as your most sort of junior staff member. And I'm really lucky in that InterScience has an amazing team, and each of them is much better than me. And I think it's the reason why we've been able to grow. And I think recruitment is always every organization's biggest issue. And so recruiting fantastic people and also retaining them is something that I think about a lot.
Brilliant. So for me, that sort of leads into what I want to ask on strengths. So you've highlighted that you almost recruit people who are really good at what they do. But tell us a bit about your strengths, Rebecca, and what kind of things do you use on a day-to-day basis? So for me, strengths are things that you perform well at, that energize you, and that you use a lot. So what kind of strengths do you use on a day-to-day basis, and how do you think you develop those as well? Sorry, there's two questions there.
Difficult question. I think my strength is, I think I'm really passionate about the issue, and I think I wouldn't have necessarily been a CEO of an organisation if I hadn't been as passionate as I am about the problem that we're trying to solve, and that is to improve social mobility and also diversity in science, technology, engineering, and maths. And I think my passion really comes through. I sort of I live it every day. I sort of think about it, and I think another thing is that I try to keep up to date with all of the latest sort of data on social mobility and diversity. And so I think that I've got a good knowledge base of the issue that we're trying to solve.
Brilliant. I sort of think that when you have these you know, it's a good litmus test for whether you're really into what you're doing, because, you know, so much is unknown. You don't know whether this sort of gamble is going to pay off in terms of setting up a company. So you've really got to be into the subject matter. You've got to be passionate about the area, to want to read about it, to want to know about it, to want to persist with it. And I think that particularly, you know, at the time we're living in, through one of the strangest, most disruptive, devastating years really for so many people due to this pandemic, we've all had to adapt to new ways of doing things. We're still having to adapt. We're still having to decide whether what we want to do is the thing that we're currently doing. And I think that some things will return to normal, but certainly not everything will. So what are the types of entrepreneurship skills that you think will be essential for the future, for people succeeding on their own terms in the future?
I think the education sector is going to see a huge transformation. I think with GCSEs, A levels and degrees the way they are, you know, I think things are starting to really change. Looking at the latest sort of skills and job market papers that have just come out from the government, there is going to be a real shift in the skills that we need and also the jobs that are available. And so I think education is going to change substantially over the next sort of decade.
Brilliant. So, but for me, you know, it's really, really brilliant to see that you've, you know, in terms of the passion that you have, you really come across as if you're on a mission.
I am.
I think it's a real key strength, and actually it shows. It shows in terms of, I mean, I've seen you give talks to students, and I've seen you talk to people about what InterScience do, and it really does come across. And actually knowing what your purpose is and knowing what your mission is, I think is really important to sort of look at. It's really important for people. So those people who are thinking about starting an enterprise, or even actually just using their enterprise skills, it's really important, I think, to think about your purpose. You know, what is really important to you. So I don't know if you agree with that, Rebecca.
Absolutely, and I think that you can always tell if someone's been working at an organisation for a long period of time, because when you ask them, what is your product or what is your service, they know it in a very short sentence. They don't have to explain it at any length. And I think really thinking about what your product is and what your service is really, really important. And I think that being a PhD student at UCL, although it does have its stresses, and those can't be underestimated, it is also a fantastic time and offers so much opportunity, both within your networks, your colleagues, your friends, and the innovation and enterprise department. I think it's a very exciting community, and I think that sort of leveraging some of that support is really, really important before your end of your PhD, because you may never have that sort of opportunity again.
And what's that community like to work in?
It's really exciting. You know, I wouldn't be anywhere else. It's wonderful to have conversations with engineers talking about how they're going to, you know, solve the issues of a lack of water or a lack of food in certain regions in the world, or people who have created things to support COVID patients in a week. You know, I think it's a really exciting and amazing place. And I think that actually the work that you both are doing and the department are doing is absolutely crucial to sort of really make sure that these very, very smart people are really going that step further with their ideas that will have a huge impact on the world, save many lives, as well as make money, which is also important.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. I mean, you know, this is fantastic advice, fantastic conversation. Where should people go to look for InterScience?
Yes, so I think that we are an organisation that really leverages researchers and PhD students to give back to young people. And this year we're doing some online mentoring. So it enables PhD students, postdocs and PIs to mentor and support students from disadvantaged backgrounds online. So if you did want to give back to your local community, it's very, very simple to sign up. You just have to go to our website, which is interscienceuk.org.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thank you from both Mario and I think. I guess on that note, we'll leave it there.
Lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Pleasure.